Welcome! We are coming to you live on NASA TV from the Asteroid Initiative Ideas Synthesis Workshop. It's our final day. We've had 2 great days, although they were split up, of great conversation, and we start this morning with the Next Generation Engagement panel. It's an Asteroid Grand Challenge focused panel, and my name is Jason Kessler. I am the Asteroid Grand Challenge Program Executive based in Washington, D.C. And with me as co-lead is Jen Gustetic, the Program Exec for Prizes and Challenges, also at NASA headquarters in D.C. Our moderator this morning is Joe Gard, who works down here in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. So to get things started, we have already a change to our agenda. Alex Hall was not able to participate, and so we're going to start with Kevin Berry, who's representing the Lifeboat Foundation. We'll move to David Delgado from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and then Eric DeJong, also from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, will be presenting. The plan is to have questions after each speaker. Kevin's going to have to depart before we wrap up, and so we want to make sure to be able to get questions to him before we break, and then jump into some discussion to figure out how can we move forward. The Grand Challenge is a new approach for NASA, and we want to figure out, are there new methods of engagement, and how do we connect with the public? So as a refresher, you might be getting sick of this slide. Maybe this panel will help us figure out how to do a better job. The Grand Challenge statement: to find all asteroid threats to human populations and know what to do about them. I think everyone agrees that is a grand challenge, and the images are very clear reminders of why we need to be thinking about this. The image on the right, from this very year, a meteor that exploded just north of Chelyabinsk in Russia, injuring over 1,000 and costing upwards of $40 million in damage. So a very clear reminder we're in a busy neighborhood. Another slide to put in context the Grand Challenge and the mission, both of which we're here in Houston talking about. Great overlap between the two, and so I think while we have a focus on the Grand Challenge in this session this morning, there's no reason why we need to limit the thinking about this next generation engagement simply to the Grand Challenge. And so as we go through our discussion, let's keep our minds wide and think about how can we include this thinking as we begin to really push out into the public the ideas behind the redirect mission as well. So, some desired outcomes for this morning. I think it's important that we get a shared understanding of what we're even meaning by next generation engagement. Maybe we won't get to a shared understanding this morning, but at least begin the conversation of what we're doing well, what needs improvement, are there new ideas on how we do that engagement. There's ability to connect to a population like we haven't seen before. We have more power in our hands and access than ever before. And there are ways that we can start thinking about the work that we do and connecting it to the people that are kind enough to pay taxes so that we can even do this work. And so I think it's important that we really start to think broadly about what this looks like. Want to look at any barriers that we might face. We are government after all, and so with all the goodness that comes with that, we do have hurdles that we have to overcome. And so how can we creatively think our way through adapting with the world that's changing around us? We'd like to prioritize and get some next steps. It's important. This is the second of the Grand Challenge public conversations that we're really having. We had a great one yesterday around crowdsourcing and citizen science, and anticipate this is really just the beginning. We have a year ahead of us at least of planning and co-creating and collaboratively designing an implementation plan for the Grand Challenge. And that's what we hope to do here. We also have a wiki that we've started collecting the ideas of the crowd. You can see the URL up there. It's a wiki that you need to get you need to request access to, but we welcome you to join us at agcnotes.wikispaces.com to let your voice be heard in this conversation. Additionally, if you are a Twitter user, hashtag AsteroidGC, you can follow the conversation. We hope to see you there. We'll be taking questions from the world through that means, and Joe's got his eyes on the internet for us this morning. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Kevin Barry, who's joining us from Lifeboat. He'll be joining us virtually. He'll have 10 minutes to present, and then I'd like to leave 10 minutes of questions after he speaks. And so with that, Kevin, are you with us?
I sure am. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
Hello from Kennedy Space Center. Is my voice sound level okay?
You sound great. Almost like you're here with us in person.
All right. Well, I wish I was. I wanted to start off this morning by giving the group a little bit of an overview, just a couple minutes on what the Lifeboat Foundation is all about. And I'm not a chart reader, so I'll leave it to your intelligence to read the actual words on the screen. Lifeboat is a nonprofit organization. We have almost 2,500 members, many of whom are fairly significant in academia and the public. We have Nobel Prize winners, we have a lot of very popular science fiction authors, and even a few NASA and contractor employees. The foundation is watching and attempting to guide, in some ways, technological advances. We all know the pace of technology advance continues to increase, and the kind of risks we're looking at are the things I think we all worry about, where technology can be used for good or evil, inadvertently or maliciously. And we recognize there's a lot of risks to both our society and actually our physical environment based on some of these technologies. So we have an approach to build what we call shields, which are programs to shield us from harm, including, that's where the Asteroid mission, Asteroid Grand Challenge fits in very nicely, and also programs we call preservers, which help us survive these events if they do happen. We're looking at, for example, how to set limitations on nanotechnology, how to deal with artificial intelligence, space habitats, thus the term lifeboat, how to stabilize and protect the internet, and of course, as I mentioned, asteroids and extraterrestrial challenges. The bottom word in yellow there, the singularity, is kind of a jargon term that's very well understood in hard science fiction. It's discussing the pace of technological intelligence and the connectivity that we have, and there are a lot of very well-founded, non-hysterical studies out there that predict, and they intersect fairly well at a position about mid-century where we may lose the ability to actually control the intelligence, whether you call it a passive intelligence or an active intelligence. Somewhere in the 2045 time frame is where they tend to center, with a span of 2020 to 2120, so that 100-year span. If you believe the progression and trending of the models, we reach a point where the world's mechanical intelligence reaches a significant level. Did my slide advance there?
Yes, it did.
All right, thank you. So Lifeboat responded to the public engagement part of the NASA challenge with a three-pronged approach: telling the story, fabrication challenge, and leveraging excitement. And because I am both in the NASA community and hopelessly linear, 3 prongs got you 3 PowerPoint slides. That was an opportunity for everyone to laugh, which I couldn't hear.
We did.
Okay, good. The first one, telling the story. The intent of this is to engage the public in a graduated approach from passive to active engagement through virtual and home-based, both home-based and school-based means. Watching the story, what we're talking about there would be taking both NASA or partner-produced media, whether it's general media that supports the theme or it's very specific to the Asteroid Challenge. Also, education-specific content, physics-based, math-based, science-based, and moving that out into the public and out into the schools. Another way we talked about doing this was using old media, for example, your classic science fiction movies, or even the newer science fiction movies, and leveraging the popularity of those, possibly moving in not just to a passive watching mode, but more of a what's wrong with this premise, what's right and wrong about the physics in this movie. The second one, making the story. Now we're getting into active engagement, video contests, independent filmmakers, whether they're sponsored directly or through contests, possibly dedicated YouTube channels, film festivals, maybe on NASA centers or near them, or virtual film festivals. We discussed social media memes to prove that Facebook isn't just all about cute kittens. There's actually cute asteroids out there, or not cute asteroids. Contests and games, and journalism, story, science fiction contests. Lifeboat sponsors does sponsor science fiction contests and awards. Now, the third piece of this is where the real magic happens and the real cost happens. We're discussing the possibility of an elaborate, massively multiplayer online gaming community that's rooted in reality. It would be tied to actual physics asteroid data, streaming in or, buffered and delayed. Physical constraints would be real, tied to real physics, except for time, of course, because things happen slowly up there. These games would require a painful reset, like real life. There's no free life, so Mario doesn't fall off the cliff and pop right back up again. We discussed, though, layering on enough bling, whether it's reality-based or fantasy-based, to really engage the community, whether you're talking about fuel caches, discoveries of rare metal ore, you want to bring in aliens, just something to engage the public, to meld the fantasy or the fantasy and the reality of this. Prizes are great, in this case, Jason, because they're free. It would be things like launch passes, center visits, maybe gaming contests at space camps, things like that don't cost hard cash but are very attractive to the public. The second prong here moves from the virtual to the hands-on community. Our target demographic here would be the maker community, the maker shops and fairs, your garage inventors, universities, students at all levels. And the concept here is to show the public that there's something real can be done with an asteroid. We discussed a building block approach from taking ore acquisition and separation, conversion to raw stock, conversion to finished components, and control from manual hands-on to radio control to autonomous. This leverages the concept that we see down here at KFC with the Lunabotics challenges. Also, the retrieval challenges have been great. And we would want to provide a path or a development hierarchy, technology readiness levels from your Rube Goldberg, garage invention to flight-like hardware, and possibly, and this is where there is some money involved, a path from sounding rocket missions to orbital missions to possibly ISS missions. The third piece of this is another engagement approach, which is really an adjunct to existing things NASA is already doing. For example, NASA has sponsored an Odyssey of the Mind program or project for years. Every year of the 5 problems, one of them is a NASA-sponsored problem. Obviously, NASA is heavily involved at the community and agency level on FIRST robotics. And so the approach here would be for Jason to go to his fellow executives and persuade them to include asteroid-themed problems in their annual events. So that about wraps up the overview of our approach. And Jason, I guess it's back to you for questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Joe, do we have anything coming in yet? Okay, let me start. We have, please.
And Jason, your audio is a little weak, so I may have to ask you to repeat.
Okay, we're throwing the mic out to the audience.
I was just wondering, does Lifeboat already have a relationship with NASA? Have we done anything in partnership before? Is there something?
No, we haven't on a formal level. We have lots of memberships engaged in different ways, but we haven't done any actual partnerships.
Hi, Kevin. How are you? Can you go back to slide 3?
Absolutely. The telling the story slide?
Yeah, that's right. So in your last box, the living the story one, where you had the piece about game or role-playing game or any kind of video game with real data, have you looked at partnering with Kerbal Space Program and perhaps doing an asteroid module with them?
No, we haven't, but that is certainly the kind of idea that we like coming out of this workshop. Jason has my email address, so if you'd like to do a little paragraph on that and send it to me, I'd love to get that discussion going.
Excellent. I'm curious, Kevin. One of the strengths here is that it's a very thoughtful, multi-pronged approach. How would you anticipate phasing over time? Because we're looking at a 10-year, the Grand Challenge is a 10-year effort. And so what would phasing of such an ambitious program look like from your perspective?
Well, I'm going to return the question to you about what's your budget. Because, justify money is always the answer to everything.
Sure. Let's assume.
But I would say, in general, I've watched the development of the Lunabotics project, or Lunabotics competition, very closely here at Kennedy Space Center. And it seems like there was about a 3-year curve to where it really started to get traction. So I would say, setting aside the actual gaming or flight demonstrations, which cost real money and have real constraints in time, I would think you could probably step each of these up on about 2-year increments.
Okay.
So you'd be 1 to 4 or 2 to 4 years getting the easy steps going, and then you're into the tough stuff, and you've got to put a real plan together.
And from your experience, getting outside participation, whether it's in kind or actual funding resources, what's your experience with that?
Most of the successes I have seen, whether it's Odyssey of the Mind, FIRST, Lunabotics, the Grand Challenge, or whatever, are done through high schools and universities. And the programs seem to be wildly popular if they involve NASA and space. So the industry side of that is interesting because budgets are tight, and I know in the programs I've been engaged with, we've struggled with less and less industry cash over the years for sponsorships.
Mm-hmm. And so
did that answer or not answer your question?
And so I'm wondering if, because that is a future you've seen, has that altered the model that you've looked at or approaches that you've taken because you've seen this trend Are there ways of pooling resources, aligning interests such that the outcome can still be achieved, but we're doing it in a different way?
I think the answer is yes. And I'll tell you, education, STEM, and corporate presence seems to me to be converging, even though money is tight on both the government and the civil side or business side. But I'm seeing more and more corporate sponsorships in the educational world, not just cash grants, but associations. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something there until, again, you start talking about multi-million dollars for flying hardware or building, server-based games.
Sure.
That's the piece of this I still have some thoughtful issues with.
I have a question about, it sounds like you have a very large community of supporters. I'm wondering if you can touch on some experiences or successes that you've had, even the failures, in terms of building that community, growing that community. Is it virtual? Do you come together in person? As we start to think about this massive network of people potentially interested in hazardous asteroids because it affects every single human being on the planet, that's a massive network that we're talking about. And so how does one start to think about getting to scale?
Jason, we have seen this. It is all about engaged leadership. And, volunteer organizations are difficult in that they're time constrained by the people involved. And when a leader emerges and is willing to do the work, we've seen a lot of success. When the leader doesn't have the time or the skills to hold the people together and drive a timeline, it's been very difficult. So I really think this is a case of, if you have volunteer leadership, they have to be able to devote a significant amount of time to these efforts. If there's a way to have a kernel of paid leadership and engage a volunteer community, I think it can be done.
Okay. We have a question from the audience.
People tend to have preconceived notions as to what large organizations are about and what they expect. If an effort is popular because of a specific organization, does that tend to narrow the range of responses? And what suggestions would you have for how to avoid that?
Could you ask your question again or slightly rephrase it? I kind of missed the thread there.
Like if NASA, for example, is sponsoring something and people are going into that effort or joining it because of that, a lot of people tend to have a specific idea, whether it's true or not, of what they think NASA is. So does that grouping tend to narrow the range of responses to the specific effort? And how could you avoid that if one specific group is drawing all the attention?
This is all in my experience. This is all about building a framework and a structure, and this is the eating the elephant one bite at a time approach, which is why I like the competitions and contests and projects so well, because near term it's got a very well-bounded set of criteria, and people in general are comfortable within a rule set or a boundary set. So the DARPA Grand Challenges and the NASA Grand Challenges, I think, have been very successful by setting a medium-term goal with a desired outcome and a reward, and in bounding it with a rule set. I've been in like you, probably everyone else, I've been in way too many philosophical discussions about the whichness of what that you can never really pin down what you're talking about. And so if you don't have a tangible expectation and outcome, that's I think, maybe the leverage to make all these things happen.
Question about, which of these things are most important for NASA to contribute, and which things can be done by, like, the Lifeboat Foundation or corporations. One is, you said that things are popular if they're related to space and have the NASA brand on it. So is NASA branding, okay, NASA may be providing the contest dollars, okay, for a prize. Are those things more important than a straight funding line? And if you're just given a NASA brand and a NASA prize, can you get the rest of the funding to do the things you've listed here with just that enabling in these tight money times? Is that feasible?
I think yes. I think yes. Now, again, I get to the point of I am not a IT type and I'm not a gamer type, but I'm a project manager by trade and program manager, and I understand how these projects can go on the reef. And I am in the business of launching things in space, and I understand the expense involved with that, and I've worked with students a lot on that. So again, I think that your video contests, your book contests, your maker challenge kind of things can be done exactly the way you say. And until you cross that threshold to really get into real hardware and software, that's where like I said, I continue to chew on that one.
I guess I wanted to ask another question. This mic is a little bit weird. Hey, you made a really interesting comment about the existing programs, the Lunar Bots and FIRST, and having them take on asteroid themes. Do you have any insight into that actually, well, especially the Lunar Bots because it's right there at Kennedy? That they'd be willing to do something like that? And because they already have communities already established that are extensive.
Yes, in fact, Ms. Sawyer here, who I don't know if she's the overall program level chair, but she's the implementer here. Her problem is one of popularity. They've been maxed out for 3. They've had this competition for 5 years, and they've been maxed out for 3. They physically don't have the resources to handle more than the 50 or so teams they get from international. So I would think we had thought in terms of an adjunct for Lunabotics, in the sense that it would be a co-competition, which Jason and his program would have to provide resources to support. Now, as far as FIRST goes, I like that one a lot. If the leadership can be persuaded, because FIRST has a single problem they do every year. And if you could persuade them to use this theme, it's almost a free ride.
So you're saying there's actually a really successful NASA-based program that limits the number of participants because of funding or resources?
Yes.
Doesn't that seem like a really interesting problem to solve on the way to trying to create an even larger community?
Oh, absolutely. And I know they would love to be able to handle, from a facility and a funding standpoint, a bigger crowd. This is a wildly popular. They hold it in the Rocket Garden here at the Visitor Center, and it's very well supported. It just takes, like I said earlier, my little catchphrase of just apply money. I really think it's a possible avenue, and it's related to lunar mining, which is certainly closely aligned with asteroid style. And I know the retrieval challenge up north is the same way. I think they're about a year behind on the curve, but they're very, very successful.
Do we have any other questions in the audience? Anything online, Joe? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Jason. I do have to drop off, but I look forward to more communication and seeing you the next time you're down.
You bet. Thanks for planting some good seeds with us.
Great.
Take care. All right. Next up, we have David Delgado from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Clicker.
Yes, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Really nice to be here. My name is David Delgado, and I'm here to talk a little bit about 2 tools that are existing tools, Eyes on the Solar System and Asteroid Watch. and potential ways to enhance these tools to really sort of deepen the interest of people who are already participating with them in relationship to near-Earth asteroids, but also broaden the reach of people who are working with this, so we can bring more people into the community. These tools have been proven to be really powerful in the areas of visualization and in communication. And so our proposal was based on different ways to sort of bring new things to these tools. First, I'd like to go into Eyes on the Solar System, and what we're seeing here is a visualization. This Eyes on the Solar System is a 3D map running on a game engine that allows you to explore the solar system through 1950 to 2050. You can click on any label and go to that. That flexibility in time allows you to do things like go back in time. Here we are in 2004, and we're looking at the Cassini spacecraft as it arrives to Saturn. Now, this is reconstructed engineering data, and so what you see is actually what happened. We can add some visual controls here. Pull way back, you see the constellations. Pull even farther back, and see some of our farthest out spacecraft. And this is zooming way in, back to Earth, turning off the visual controls so that we can get a more photorealistic view of Earth and its correct position in space. We have already included a few dozen asteroids and comets into the system of Eyes on the Solar System. Some of the most popular ones and some of that have been considered the most explorable. Here we're looking at Vesta with a shape model provided by the Dawn spacecraft, the data, or you can, because we have that flexibility of 100 years, go back in time and look at the year 2000. Here we'll zoom into the NEAR spacecraft as it orbits the Eros asteroid. You can do kind of cool things where you can lock on to specific things, either the asteroid or the comet or the spacecraft. Here we're locking on to the NEAR spacecraft, and you can see what it sees at that time. Pull back and look at the solar system, all of the various labels, turn those off, and see a variety of different asteroid paths in the solar system. These are just a few of a very brief overview of the capabilities of Eyes on the Solar System, and just wanted to go over that briefly so we can talk about ways to enhance those things. Also wanted to bring up Asteroid Watch. Now, Asteroid Watch has been very good at communicating to people out there about the potential risk of near-Earth asteroids. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. And I wanted to bring up just this Twitter page. There's this Twitter account that has a really big community, and this is a community that's actively engaged. They're listening. They want to know about asteroids, but we think that there's a lot of ways to bring more people in, and we wanted to think about new ways, new activities to sort of broaden that group and bring people who don't normally think about these things into the community of near-Earth asteroids. Sometimes we get free advertising, and this is an image that you've all have seen many, many times, obviously, but I wanted to show this. There's a lot of reasons to talk about this specific event for exactly what happened, but this was interesting because of the timing of when it happened. This happened just hours before the larger near-Earth asteroid DA14 was a near pass by Earth, and that was really interesting because this event obviously had a lot of media attention, and nearly 300,000 people went to Eyes on the Solar System for the DA14 pass by to watch the real-time visualization of that near-Earth asteroid pass by Earth. And because Eyes on the Solar System is a 3D map that can go backwards and forwards in time, that visualizes things that you can't see necessarily, like the DA14 pass by. That makes it a really good tool for telling stories and to tell visual stories. And so we wanted to just think about what you could do with that. If you could just start with simple things, from simple going to sophisticated. What are asteroids? You know, a lot of people, if we want to bring in a larger community, some people don't think about these things. So let's start with the basics. What are near-Earth asteroids? Which ones are considered dangerous? Which have the, maybe we could take a tour of the solar system and look at Earth and Moon and Mars and look at the impacts that asteroids have had, and which ones are the most interesting, which ones are the largest. Let's compare those things. Maybe we can pre-visualize or do more sophisticated things like pre-visualize asteroid encounters, maybe redirection concepts. This idea to look forward in time is also an interesting capability where we can think about how things may happen in the future and visualize those things so we can get people interested in what may happen. Also, bringing in more data into Eyes in the Solar System will just allow more people to be more interested. If you, of course, we'd love to bring in the full catalog of the asteroid data into Eyes in the Solar System, which would be incredibly interesting, but also add multiple levels of data, like size, mass, the risk of impact, estimated value, and allow people to interact with that data in ways that they're not able to now. What if they could have user functionality to allow people to tag their favorite asteroids or follow them over time, or potentially even rate them, so that over time we can see which asteroids are of greatest interest to a large population of people. Another idea was sort of thinking about, you know, sometimes seeing is believing. And I just think that if we could see the amount of near-Earth asteroids, near-Earth objects that are around us, I don't think we would have any problem of raising interest. One of the things is that you sort of have to be at a certain level of interest and have a certain level of passion to participate in the citizen science and crowdsourcing projects that are already out there. But a lot of people aren't there yet. But what if we could show them through augmented reality apps like this? And there's certain things that exist out there using certain similar technologies like sun trackers and things, where you can look at the sky from your position and see things that are there, but you can't see them necessarily with your naked eye. Using Eyes on the Solar System capabilities, moving things in fast time, right? That would add sort of the drama of seeing things more quickly, or seeing it in real time, where you could access some of the data like I just talked about, knowing what they're called, what their mass is, their potential risk of impact, all of those things. Just being able to see those things more clearly will open up sort of a wider range or sort of an easier point of entry for people to sort of start thinking about these things, and they'll just be more available to us. And we spent a long time talking about citizen science and crowdsourcing, so I'm not going to go into this. We did a great job of talking about it yesterday. But I did want to talk a little bit about creating games, and sometimes it's just kind of cool to have fun. We're thinking, would it just be fun to take loved games like this and bring in some real data and bring in some just the capability to have a little bit of fun and learn a little bit about asteroids, near-Earth asteroids, and the potential risks. I mean, I'm imagining with something like this, you're not going to learn a huge amount, but it's one of those things where we're talking like an entry level, multiple points of access. Yesterday when we were talking about citizen science and crowdsourcing, one of the questions that came up for me are, what are the potential barriers for people getting involved with this? Mm-hmm. And I think, you have to sort of be in the group already or have a certain level of passion and skills to be able to participate in these things. Well, I think the time is right to really open up multiple levels of entry so that, even if it's a fun sort of participation level like this, it might serve as an easy way to get people in the door, thinking about real data, that this is being powered by real data, and help them move upward into higher levels of participation. Mm-hmm. And so that wraps it up for me. But I think that using these tools to engage the people that we already participating, creating new tools to bring more people in at sort of earlier levels and sort of multiple points of entry, bringing in more data, more access to different layers of data, and making some fun games out of it would be a great way to use these tools. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's just a great idea. I mean, an asteroids game based on real asteroid data in a sense, or the ability to hold up your smartphone and actually see what near-Earth asteroids are there is very cool. But how about Eyes on the Solar System as kind of even a observation planning kind of tool for the Minor Planet Center, some of these asteroid observations, where you could create kind of, ellipsoids of uncertainty or other things, and kind of show the improvement to the, the asteroid orbit model or other things as additional data comes in.
No, I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, it's a really versatile tool. The flexibility in time over that 100-year period from 1950 to 2050, and the ability to pre-visualize things. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount of flexibility in that tool, and I think something like that's a great idea also. Yeah. Yep.
Just something to bear in mind. When you got to the asteroid belt, you can stand on any one of those asteroids and not see another asteroid unless you're on a binary or ternary type body. Another thing to bear in mind, I'm all for public engagement and more, but you need big glass to find the stuff that NASA wants to find. We're talking 3-meter class type ground-based instruments to find the small stuff, or space-based instruments. And those are things that the public or crowdsourcing probably cannot likely finance. I mean, the movie Iron Sky was financed via crowdsourcing and so on. It's an interesting sci-fi flick, but we're talking big money, big science. And most crowdsourcing, they do not have access to that big science. We're talking $500 million or tens of millions of dollars type of a thing. So I think it's important to also bear in mind a reality check on that. You can be on any NEO and not see another one unless you're on a binary or trinary type body.
Yeah, thanks. I think you are you maybe referring to the last slide of the asteroids game?
No, actually, the whole.
Yeah.
I love the Eyes on the Solar System. Regrettably, it only goes back to 1950.
Yeah.
They tell another interesting story. If you want to tell the asteroid story, take it back to 1801, when astronomers were trying to really understand the Titius abode law, and where was the planet between Mars and Jupiter, and discovery of Ceres, a handful more asteroids, main belt asteroids by Olbers and so on. And then there's another flux in asteroid discovery in the 1840s. And then the first NEO, which you actually showed here, 433 Eros, was discovered in 1898. And then the sudden flood of things that come in. But the dots representing those asteroids would not be to scale. It'd give a false impression. Wow, it's a pretty crowded space. So,
yeah.
But there's a lot of space between that. But you see quite a logarithmic rise in the discovery rate, especially in 1998 when NASA takes on the goal of the NEO observations program was created and to find these things. But that's probably overwhelms the system. The folks at Armand Observatory have done great visualization, data visualization, and the folks at Pan-STARRS as well to show how kind of crowded it is, but those dots representing those NEOs are not to scale at all.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that specifically not to scale, when I was talking about the augmentation app visualization. But if you can just imagine what would it look like, I mean, at real scale. If you could look at the sky and just see the full catalog of everything we've discovered so far, and look 10 years into the future and see what's actually been discovered then, been identified. There's a lot out there, and I guess my point was just wondering, like, if they weren't so hard to see, I think it would be a lot easier to get people engaged in thinking about what's actually going on. Yeah.
And I'd just like to jump in terms of recognizing that the crowdsourcing and the engagement, even if it's taking the original Asteroids video game that I cut my teeth on, as a way of providing access to people, you're right. A space mission is going to cost a lot of money. Big telescopes cost a lot of money, but it's an issue that affects everybody on the planet. And so if we can connect to them to show them how this relates, then it becomes theirs as well. And so then we don't have to look to some big savior coming to provide the billion-dollar spacecraft that's gonna save me, but rather I see how I'm connected to that, and so therefore I want to be a participant in it. And so for me, what this discussion is really all about is we've got an incredible science community that's been working on this problem for a long time, but there's an enormous number of people out there and a cognitive wealth that we haven't yet tapped into. And so this is the first way of, well, not the first way, but it is a way for us to begin that conversation, to start to pull people in that can help us and accelerate that work and provide the meaning and the relevance for them on why Chelyabinsk is an important time in their life.
And you can almost see that as the gateway drug to potentially saying, well, now how can I help? Yeah. And a large part of what we talked about yesterday in the Citizen Science and Crowdsourcing panel that many of you were at, but not all of you were at, was what actually the projectized elements are that people can contribute to meaningfully in the activity of getting more data about each of these potential hazardous asteroids, as well as helping us to, for example, improve our ability for machines and our algorithms to process the data, the tons of data these large surveys are taking in every day as they're trying to discover new objects and do tracking and characterization of those objects as well. We announced a partnership with Planetary Resources yesterday to try to develop algorithms based on Catalina Sky Survey data to improve the efficiency of those algorithms using the crowd through things like Zooniverse and Top Coder challenges to improve upon today's state-of-the-art algorithms for actually processing through a bunch of that data that those large surveys take in. So there's certainly ways that individuals, once they're hooked, may also be able to start kind of graduating up the scale of tasks that they can help actually be involved in order to help do this work in a meaningful way. And it may not be the 3-meter telescope in their backyard that's going to cost someone a lot of money to put up themselves, but it could be follow-up observations that they're taking with a smaller telescope to help with tracking, for example, or light curve analysis, which is a sophisticated activity. But there's a number of different ways that we're also trying to think about how to harness the time and the expertise of folks to meaningfully contribute to the activity once they're hooked.
Is it possible to use something like the 3D visualization models to track asteroids with known telemetries back to an origin? For example, if a series of asteroids that we don't know little about was tracked back to a major event, knowing what that event was might be able to tell us a lot more about the asteroids than our current level of direct observation.
That probably is a better question for this gentleman right here.
That's an interesting thought, but right now our knowledge base is not good enough to do that. We can track things for maybe 100 years, okay, with good data and good detection information, okay, we can kind of run out the simulation for maybe 100 years. But you're talking about multi-body problems, which has always been a big problem in physics in general, okay? And so solving multi-body problems, for small bodies interacting with each other and with larger bodies like Jupiter as well as Earth and Mars is a very difficult problem. So, and in fact, a lot of us look at it as, if we detect it, we track it, and then we can predict for 100 years, it becomes somebody else's problem after the next 100 years. So, but one that certainly is worth pursuing, and as we get better physical simulations, then we can track things for longer periods of time, but not back to billions of years or hundreds of billions of years or tens of millions of years. So, thanks.
Great.
So, any plans to integrate the ARM mission scenario into, like, the future module into Eyes on the Sky so that the public can better visualize what we're doing? And actually, at the same time, you save the mission a little bit of money by we could use that as our public outreach.
Yes. So I think that's exactly what this tool is made for, and would be. It's a great way to just show the general public how it can work.
I think it'd be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think so.
Great. Anything, Joe? All right. Thank
Great.
you, David.
Thank you.
Our last presenter, Eric DeJong from JPL.
Thank you very much. And basically, I'm going to talk about one very simple idea, and that's the idea of automating the creation of videos for asteroids. And in order to do that, I think I'm going to actually run a video, okay, so that'll be on time for my 10 minutes. And the idea is very simple. People love to look at movies, okay? Hollywood has done a great job of giving us ideas about what asteroid impacts would be like. We'd like to make those things be a little more meaningful, okay? And what I listed here are some links that you can also follow up on after our meetings here. And it's the idea of creating both movies, images, mosaics, maps, and models. And so all of those are things that you can put in the hands of people so that my idea actually is to replace myself with 5-year-olds, okay? And replace all my friends with 5-year-olds. And we'll do it in one of two ways. We'll be successful in giving them the tools so they can make better videos than I can make, or they'll grow and replace me anyway. So I know I can be successful at that. So here is the idea in essence, okay, in a block diagram. Science teams have ideas about how you can either trigger things by either time, by an event, or by features. And there's this huge amount of data we're grabbing, and in fact, big data allows us, with artificial intelligence or with knowledge-based machine, language-driven things, to then grab from that pool of big data the things we need, like this, okay? Like an image to taught us, and a light curve. And not to just show it as a still frame, but to automatically make the video that would show this. And I'll show you a video at the end of this. And the idea is to say, look, let's put those tools out there just like we're going to have a crowdsourcing approach to creating new algorithms. Let's actually create the software that people could use on their laptop to make videos. We also want to get an idea of our entire mission set for the asteroid missions. And we have incredible images of Earth now, so there's no reason why we can't show every spot on Earth where people are working on asteroids. And that includes the crowdsourcing stuff, but also the mission people. Where are they? What are they doing? And to actually view observatories, view the operations, and view the tools as they're being created, and put out an animation about that. But what is asteroid impacts all about? I mean, we know the kinds of killer asteroid, events. Everybody goes back to the KT kind of event. But what about just one asteroid hitting another asteroid? What kind of damage do you do? This is Castalia being hit by a 600-meter object, okay? And what does it look like? Well, the red part is like a 7 on the Richter scale, and the tan parts are undisturbed. But how do we get some of this data? As we plan missions to asteroids, we can certainly do Goldstone observations and things like that with radar, but we can also do stereo observations. If we have actually cameras on the systems that we build, then this is just an example of a 3D model of a 60-kilometer crater made from 300 kilometers above at 25 centimeters per pixel. If we also want to show exactly what the whole asteroid mission is about, we can use CAD/CAM models, but we can also use pictures to create photorealistic images. We don't have a camera watching the Curiosity rover, yet we're all familiar with watching it on TV. And the reason is we can build a model of it that we can then create a computer graphic model, and then the terrain we have beneath here is real terrain. And so here's the idea. if we observe things, collect this pool of data, we can then visualize them with these automatic techniques, and then we can embed the videos and use the models and the images and the maps and the mosaics to populate things like eyes in the solar system, and also to populate things like commercial tools like Skyscan and lots of others that people currently use in planetarium domes, so that when they're at the right place, you know, and in the moment, they can visualize things right there on the spot. And there's no reason not to do this. It's just a matter of wanting to do it. So let's look at some of the images and videos. This is a real-time video. This is how fast this thing moves. It's 75 tons of a telescope that is on Haleakala Crater, and this is used to track very fast-moving objects by the Air Force. Just for comparison, this is not an image of an antenna at Goldstone. Okay, this is a computer graphic of an antenna at Goldstone. And so when I say, you know, this is something we can do, I don't mean something we can do tomorrow. I mean, this is something we can do now, today. And so it's very difficult to tell the difference between whether I have a video camera at 4K or whether I have images at 4K. These are some radar observations taken by that antenna at Goldstone, okay? And I'm not saying I want to blur reality. I'm saying I want to take the computer graphics, when we do computer graphics, to make them as real as the photo images that we take. Here is actually the data that's returned, and this is from Castalia. It's just range and Doppler cells. Just these little blobs are what you're really returning. But from those, you can say, okay, I make a simulation, and I can try to say what kind of shape model would it take to return this range and Doppler data. And the first thing I can do is draw a little convex hull, the little white thing, but then I can actually make that model, the unique model that fits those range and Doppler cells, and get 30-meter kind of resolution from radar observations. And you may think, is that model true? And actually, when we made these models, it took us years to make the first couple, and now we can do them in real time. So here's a light curve that we produced before a set of observations were, before an epoch of observations were happened on the ground. So we predicted it from the radar observations, and then as the observations were being made, the red are optical observations done on the ground with other observatories. We collect them, and we're not perfect. See, there's one that missed right there, okay? But it shows how well this 30-meter model matches the real observations. So before that, I thought it's a great thing to use for visualizations, but I didn't have a great belief in it. But after we did a few examples like this, I think it's a very, very good predictor of what you're likely to see. And the shape model for TAS has been updated again, and each time that we have it fly by the Earth, we take the set of radar observations and build the model and improve it each time. And those models are available just like the observations themselves are. And another question yesterday was, gee, why not have the Minor Planetary Center add images? Well, I'd like to have them add images and models so that you have one-stop shopping for models, images, light curves, videos, you know, you have it all in one place. And simulation. So this is a simulation by Eric Oshfog again, not only showing the impact, but showing then each of other pieces of the asteroid are thrown off to become impactors themselves. So we kind of live in a cosmic shooting gallery, okay, with all these asteroids and all these impacts. And you can even see that Castalia was formed most likely by an impact itself, by two other objects together. And there's a lot of examples of that, and there's a lot of examples even on Venus and on the Moon and on Mercury where you can see that some of the impacts were dual impacts. And so people can right now, today, with the tools we have, make flyovers of asteroids or flyovers of Mars. This is just one example of 250,000 images taken by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter high-rise camera. And this is just from one single image. The single image, of course, in this case is 20,000 pixels by 60,000 pixels long. And those kinds of camera systems have been available for a decade. Those are the kind of camera systems we'll have on our mission. So we will be able to see asteroids at these kinds of resolutions, both now and in the future. And I'm not ending with Mars, I'm actually ending with Juno. This is all simulated. This is simulated launch, simulated deployment, okay? And the reason I wanted to end with Juno was, at our previous workshop, it was a week before a near-Earth object was going to fly by the Earth, a very predictable one, a very small one, a few tens of meters across. That would be the Juno spacecraft. It was flying by at 35 to 39 kilometers per second, the speed of a very fast near-Earth object. And so if you want to see more about that encounter, we did use it actually as an example where people could observe it like they would observe an asteroid. There'll be more at the AGU on December 10th. So I thank you for your interest, and thank you for the chance to come here and talk about this. And again, this is the kind of thing we can do today. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Eric.
Hi, Phil.
Eric, I have a super geeky question. So this process that identifies the 3D model from the radar data and stuff,
yes.
Does it typically converge to a single solution, or are there multiple good candidates for the shape?
Well, that's a very good question. And if you have enough samples in time of range and Doppler, it will converge to a single solution. But that means you have to have been able to observe it long enough. And typically, a few tens or hundreds of samples are great. So if a few tens or hundreds in time of range and Doppler, then you can probably get a unique solution. If you have less than that, then you'll have multiple solutions, and but then you create multiple models, and then later, if you get another observation, you can correct it. So yeah. And Scott Hudson, by the way, was the person who first was able to do this at University of Washington, and he had this kind of lab where he tested his capability by using a different, instead of range and Doppler from a radio frequency, he did it with LiDAR, okay, and laser, and so that's why he was able to perfect this technique.
Eric, can you, based on just photometric light curves and maybe occultation chords after large asteroids go in front of the star, can you even get a close model based on that type of limited data?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. Yes, you can. It won't be the same kind of resolution as you get, you saw here for Totatus, but nonetheless, you can get kind of a generic shape of whether it's kind of spherical or two spheres or what kind of lobes. So indeed you can, and it's certainly a first good fit. And in the very early animation, we just did a convex hull on the thing, and you can do those kind of things starting, and then depending on which number of observations you have and its spin rate, you can perfect that model. And I think Carl was suggesting that's why it's also good for amateurs to give us more phase information, which again would help with those models. So that's again a place where citizen science could help us, in fact, build those models.
Yeah, and I have yet to see that come on unmannedspaceflight.com, which has been incredible. They do a better job, in fact, than what NASA does, I think, but they're using uncalibrated imagery, from Cassini or other places, but they bring out other details that, because the flux of data coming back from other folks. But unmannedspaceflight.com is an interesting resource, but it's not calibrated.
Right. Well, unmannedspaceflight.com is a great resource, and they have a lot of enthusiastic people working on it, okay? And some of the people there use the same tools, in fact, literally the same tools as NASA provides. And in fact, if you check the credits and some of the people that are involved on, very often the same people that are on the mission may be part of unmannedspaceflight.com. So, and we hire some of them as well. So it's a great resource in many ways. And again, it's another indication where if we make the source code available with the tools, there are amateurs who are willing to go through the steep learning curve of adapting those tools and using them, and they are very professional acting amateurs. So yes. And in the case of Juno, we encourage them to actually produce their own images during the Earth encounter, and we have a gallery where we feature, everybody's images, not just the ones that NASA produced.
I think related to that online, there's a question on where can people find access to the models and the data to be able to participate in some of that?
Yeah, actually, my second slide, which I think the slides are available, online. My second slide actually has not a full set of links, okay? I knew that David was going to talk before me, so I didn't include the eyes on the solar system because I knew he had that link. But it includes some additional ones, including ones where on a NASA homepage you have access to 3D models, many of which are the ones that were used in the eyes in the solar system, but also additional models, like models of spacecraft that you can actually download yourself and use with both commercial tools, but also with free tools as well that are available. So yes. So take a look at the second slide.
And the slide should be available in about a week online.
Great.
It looks like we're done with questions. Given our conversation yesterday about crowdsourcing and phase work and light curves, this adds a whole nother layer into the power of visualization. And so one of the things that we've recognized as we think to engage the amateur community in light curve work, it's really difficult. But I think what we've seen these last two presentations, the power of visualization opens up doors and access for people that then can trigger some of the deeper work. And so to see now how things are starting to pull together and the potential overlap here is really, really exciting.
I might make one last comment, and that is the Juno flyby is certainly not the only spacecraft flyby that we'll have.
Yeah.
Okay? And perhaps we may want to consider that these kind of flyby missions are practice runs for near-Earth observations that can engage the public as well as professional observatories. And in fact, several people from the conference, I don't want to do justice to anybody, or injustice to anyone, but several people ended up observing Juno that were at this conference as a result of our discussions. So,
fantastic.
So thank you.
That's great.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take a short break and come back, and then hope to have some good discussion based on what we've seen, and then other ideas that you might have on moving forward with this next generation of engagement. So about 10-minute break. We'll be back at 20 after.